Every day we face a flood of information, the volume of which exceeds everything humanity received in a year just a couple of centuries ago. Our brain did not evolve for such a load. Studies show the average person checks their smartphone about 150 times a day, and Generation Alpha children spend up to 7 hours daily in front of screens. These are not just numbers. This is a reality that changes our neural connections and mental health. Anxiety among teenagers has increased by 70% over the last decade, and attention span has decreased from 12 to 8 seconds. We live in an era when notifications, news, and updates attack us around the clock, not allowing the brain to reboot. Our children are born into this chaos and know no other reality. How can they and we maintain clarity of thought and emotional balance? How can we find a balance between digital opportunities and mental well-being? This is not a question of abandoning technology. It is a question of developing new survival strategies in the information ocean. Imagine your brain as an ancient computer suddenly connected to high-speed internet. Every notification, every new post in your feed, it's an electrical impulse activating your nervous system. When your smartphone vibrates, dopamine is released in your brain, a neurotransmitter of pleasure and reward. This creates a vicious cycle. We get a notification, experience a microdose of pleasure, and want more. The child's brain is particularly vulnerable to this mechanism. In adolescence, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for self-control, is not yet fully formed, making it much harder for them to stop. With constant stimulation, the brain stops producing enough dopamine naturally. The ordinary joys of life, live communication, reading a book, a walk in the park, no longer bring satisfaction. The multitasking we are so proud of is actually an illusion. The brain is not capable of processing several streams of information simultaneously. It simply switches rapidly between tasks, expending colossal energy resources. Each such switch consumes up to 25% of productivity. Prolonged exposure to information overload leads to the depletion of cognitive resources. Memory deteriorates, attention scatters, and the ability for deep analysis decreases. Scientists are recording an alarming phenomenon. Modern children read texts in an F-shaped trajectory, snatching individual fragments and failing to retain the meaning of the whole. They lose the ability for long-term concentration, which is necessary for solving complex problems. The brain adapts to constant stimulation, demanding increasingly vivid and fast impressions. This affects the emotional sphere. The fear of missing out develops, the fear of missing something important. And when the information flow dries up, boredom and anxiety set in. Symptoms of a true digital withdrawal. How to recognize that the digital world is starting to consume us and our children. The first alarming bell is constant fatigue that doesn't go away even after sleep. Our body sends signals: frequent headaches, tension in the neck and shoulders, dry and red eyes. These physical symptoms are just the tip of the iceberg. A real storm is happening inside. Have you noticed irritability in yourself when trying to pull away from the screen? Or anxiety when your phone isn't at hand? These are the first signs of digital addiction. In children, symptoms are particularly vivid. Observe. Does the child become aggressive when you ask them to turn off the tablet? After games, are they overexcited, unable to fall asleep? Or conversely, apathetic when there's no access to gadgets? These are signals of a disturbed neurochemical balance. It's important for parents to notice changes in behavior: decreased academic performance, loss of interest in previous hobbies, reduced real-life communication. Does the child refuse walks in favor of video games? Prefers virtual friends to real ones? Forgets to eat when online? It's time to sound the alarm. A particularly dangerous symptom is sleep disturbances. The blue light from screens suppresses melatonin production, and an overexcited brain cannot relax. The result is insomnia, shallow sleep, nightmares. In children, this leads to chronic fatigue and concentration problems. Observe the child's emotional reactions to content. Anxiety, fears, intrusive thoughts after watching videos. Signs that the information is toxic for an undeveloped psyche. The critical moment comes when the virtual world becomes a way to escape reality. When a gadget is the only tool for self-soothing. When a child retreats online from any discomfort. This is a signal for immediate action. In the informational storm of modernity, our mind is like a small boat tossed by waves of notifications, news, and constant updates. Mindfulness becomes the anchor that allows us to stay put when everything around us spins in a digital vortex. But what is mindfulness in practice? It is the ability to be fully present in the current moment, noticing one's thoughts, feelings, and sensations without judgment. It is the skill of returning to the here and now when the mind wanders in the labyrinths of the past or future. For children of the digital generation, this skill becomes not a luxury, but a necessity for survival. Harvard University research shows that regular mindfulness practices in children reduce anxiety levels by 40% and improve concentration by 35%. Neuroscientists record structural changes in the brain after 8 weeks of practice. Areas responsible for attention and emotional regulation are strengthened. How can these practices be adapted for different ages? For preschoolers, mindfulness begins with simple games. Attention bell. The child listens to the sound of a bell until it completely fades, raising their hand when they no longer hear it. Breathing with a plush friend. The child places a toy on their stomach and observes how it rises and falls with their breath. For school children, 5-minute anchor practices are suitable. Focusing on breathing, scanning body sensations, conscious observation of thoughts. Teenagers can be offered the stop technique. Stop. Take a breath. Observe sensations. Proceed with awareness. This allows them to interrupt automatic stress reactions, especially on social media. A key point: parents must practice mindfulness themselves, becoming a living example for their children. In a world where the flow of information never ceases for a second, our breath remains the only anchor that is always with us. Breath is a bridge between body and mind, a simple and powerful self-regulation tool available to everyone regardless of age. When a child or adult feels increasing anxiety from another news stream, the simple 4-7-8 technique can restore balance in a matter of minutes. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 7, exhale for 8. The physiological effect is instantaneous. The parasympathetic nervous system is activated, cortisol levels drop, and heart rate slows. For preschool children, breathing practices can be turned into an engaging game. Balloon breathing. The child imagines their belly as a balloon that inflates on inhale and deflates on exhale. Bee breathing. A deep inhale through the nose and a long exhale with a buzzing sound. Such games not only relieve tension, but also develop awareness of bodily sensations. School children can use the 5 fingers technique. With each inhale, the child touches their thumb to one of the fingers on their hand, and on exhale, releases it. This helps to shift attention from anxious thoughts to tactile sensations. Meditation for children differs from adult practice. It is shorter, more dynamic, and often includes elements of visualization. A 3-minute bubble meditation teaches children to observe thoughts without attachment. Each thought is a bubble that appears, floats, and bursts. Superhero meditation allows the child to imagine themselves filling with strength, calm, and confidence with each breath. To make these practices a part of family culture, integrate them into daily rituals. A morning minute of breathing before school, an evening meditation before bed, a breathing break before doing homework. Create a calm corner in the house with pillows, a timer, and reminder cards about different techniques. The main thing is consistency and the parent's own example. An information diet is not just a buzzword, but a vital necessity in an era of endless data streams. Just as we choose foods for a healthy diet, it is equally important to select the information that we and our children consume. The first rule of a digital diet is conscious choice. Before opening a new tab or app, ask yourself, why do I need this information? Will it make my life better? Teach your children this simple filter. It will reduce the consumption of meaningless content by 70%. The second rule is quality over quantity. One deep, thoughtful piece of material is more valuable than 100 superficial headlines. Help your child find authoritative sources for their interests, be it science, art, or a hobby. The third rule is information meal times. Instead of constantly snacking on news, set specific times to check email, messengers, and social networks. For elementary school children, this might be 15 minutes after lessons. For teenagers, half an hour in the evening. The rest of the time, it's best to keep the phone out of sight. The fourth rule is information detox. Regularly arrange days or at least hours without gadgets. Research shows that after just 24 hours of digital fasting, the brain begins to restore its ability for deep concentration. Teach children critical thinking. This is the main tool for information self-defense. Discuss what they see online. Ask questions. Who benefits from this news? What facts support it? How do you feel when you read this? Such conversations develop media literacy naturally. And remember, children learn not from your words, but from your actions. If you yourself are constantly checking your phone, no rules will convince your child of the value of information moderation. In an era of endless notifications and continuous information streams, time management becomes not just a useful skill, but a true lifeline for the entire family. Traditional time management can no longer cope with the challenges of the digital world. We need new approaches that consider the reality our children live in. The first step is a family digital audit. Spend a weekend tracking how much time each family member spends with gadgets. The results are usually shocking. Most parents underestimate screen time by 30 to 40%. Visualize this data. Create a colorful chart with your children, showing the ratio of online and offline activities. The second step is to allocate digital zones in the schedule. Instead of chaotic gadget use, define specific time blocks. For elementary school children, this might be 30 minutes after school and 30 minutes before dinner. For teenagers, an hour after completing homework. The rest of the time, phones and tablets rest in a special gadget parking lot, a beautiful box in a common room. The third step is to create a family schedule with a balance of activities. Use color coding: blue for studying, green for physical activity, yellow for creativity, purple for digital entertainment, red for family communication. Visually, it immediately becomes clear whether the day is balanced. Pay special attention to transitions between activities. Abruptly switching from the bright, dynamic digital world to calm household chores is difficult for children. Introduce a digital bridge ritual, a 5-minute period where, after using gadgets, the child takes a few deep breaths, stretches, and talks about what they did online. Don't forget about sacred time, periods when the whole family is guaranteed to be offline. This could be dinner, a joint walk, or an hour before bed. These islands of live communication become an anchor of stability in the ocean of information. In a world where digital devices have become an extension of ourselves, establishing healthy boundaries for their use is not a luxury, but a necessity. This is especially true for families, where the first habits of interacting with the information environment are formed. A family digital contract is not just a set of prohibitions, but a conscious agreement that protects the mental health of all family members. Start with a joint discussion. Instead of a directive, "No phones at dinner," suggest that children think for themselves. What do we lose when everyone is glued to their screens? Surprisingly, even 6-year-olds can grasp the value of live communication if the question is posed correctly. Create physical zones free of gadgets. The dining room, bedrooms, perhaps the living room at certain hours. Mark them with special symbols or signs that children can draw themselves. Set technological restrictions using special applications, but explain their meaning. This timer is not a punishment, but an assistant that protects your eyes and brain. For elementary school children, the traffic light rule works. Red, no screens. Yellow, limited time with educational apps. Green, free use within the established limit. For teenagers, it's important to explain the neurobiological reasons for restrictions, how notifications trigger dopamine release, why the brain gets hooked on short videos, how blue light from screens affects sleep. Knowledge of the mechanisms of digital addiction helps to form a conscious attitude towards technology. Be consistent, but flexible. If a child is enthusiastically working on a digital project for school, it might be worth extending screen time. However, if they are mechanically scrolling through a feed, it's time to gently remind them of the agreements. The main rule of digital boundaries is that parents must observe them first. Children do not listen to our words. They copy our actions. The information we consume daily evokes a whole range of emotions in us, from delight to anger, from curiosity to deep anxiety. These emotional reactions are not just fleeting states. They shape our worldview and affect our mental well-being. Emotional hygiene is the art of recognizing, accepting, and regulating one's feelings in response to informational stimuli. The first step in emotional hygiene is learning to identify your feelings. Many children and even adults struggle to accurately name what they are feeling after watching a video or reading a news story. Create a family ritual of an emotional check-in. After using gadgets, everyone can point to a special emotion chart to show what they are feeling right now. For toddlers, simple pictures with basic emotions will work, while for teenagers, suggest Plutchik's wheel of emotions with more subtle shades of feelings. The second step is normalizing any emotional reactions. Explain to children that it's normal to feel fear or anger after viewing certain content. The problem isn't the emotion itself, but what we do with it. The technique, name to tame, helps reduce the intensity of negative experiences. I notice that I feel anxious right now after watching this video. Simply verbalizing it already reduces emotional intensity by 30%. The third step is teaching regulation strategies. The emotional thermometer method helps children assess the intensity of a feeling on a scale of 1 to 10 and choose an appropriate self-help technique. For mild discomfort, 1-3. Deep breathing is sufficient. For medium intensity, 4-7. Physical activity or talking to a loved one can help. For strong emotions, 8-10. It's necessary to temporarily disconnect from the source of stress and apply deeper grounding techniques. It is especially important to teach children to recognize toxic content, materials that cause persistent negative emotions. Together, create an emotional media consumption diary, where the child notes which videos, games, or websites cause them discomfort. Over time, they will learn to avoid trigger sources themselves. Develop emotional resilience in children through simulation games. How would you feel if you read such news? How would you react to such a comment online? Discuss not only the emotions themselves, but also constructive ways to express them. Remember, the goal is not to suppress negative feelings, but to learn to experience them consciously and with dignity. In an era of digital overload, our body often becomes the last line of defense against informational stress. We become so immersed in the virtual world that we forget about the most reliable recovery tool: our own body. When a child sits hunched over a tablet for hours, their muscles tense, breathing becomes shallow, and the nervous system switches to a state of constant activation. Body-oriented practices help break this vicious cycle, bringing us back to the present moment through bodily sensations. A simple 5 senses exercise works wonders after prolonged screen time. Name 5 things you see, 4 things you can touch, 3 sounds you hear, 2 smells, and 1 taste. This instantly brings the child back from the virtual space into the real world. For preschoolers, games with elements of weight and pressure work great. Rolling on the floor wrapped in a blanket, a sandwich of pillows, hugs with gentle compression. Such exercises activate the proprioceptive system, our internal sense of body position in space, which often suffers from an excess of visual stimulation. For school children, suggest energy breaks between gadget sessions. 30 seconds of jumping, stretching, or dancing will help release accumulated tension and reboot the brain. Teenagers will benefit from more conscious practices. For example, Jacobson's progressive muscle relaxation, alternating tension and relaxation of muscle groups with a focus on the sensations that arise. This technique not only relieves physical discomfort, but also teaches how to distinguish between states of tension and relaxation, which is critically important for self-regulation in the digital age. Integrate movement into daily family rituals. A 5-minute morning warm-up instead of checking social media, an evening walk instead of watching videos, family dancing to favorite music. These simple habits gradually form a new culture of relationships with one's own body and technology. In a world where information is available 24/7, our sleep has come under threat. The blue light of screens, the endless scrolling of news feeds, and constant notifications disrupt our natural rest cycles. Research reveals shocking statistics. 80% of teenagers sleep with their phones nearby, and 70% check them within 30 minutes of waking up and before going to bed. This isn't just a bad habit, it's a biochemical assault on our bodies. The blue light from screens blocks the production of melatonin, the hormone responsible for quality sleep. 1 hour in front of a screen before bed reduces melatonin levels by 30%. For a child's body, the consequences are even more severe. The deep sleep phase, when memory consolidation and nervous system recovery occur, is disrupted. Creating a healthy bedtime ritual becomes not a luxury, but a necessity. Start with a digital sunset. An hour before bed, all screens in the house are turned off. Replace them with calm activities: reading a physical book, coloring mandalas, gentle stretching. For elementary school children, the sleep helpers technique works. Special toys or objects that take away worries and keep them until morning. Teenagers benefit from the brain dump ritual, writing down all thoughts and unfinished tasks before bed to free the mind from the need to hold on to them. It's important to create a gadget-free zone in the bedroom. Let phones spend the night in a special parking spot in another room. Equally important is adequate rest throughout the day. Our brain is not designed for continuous stimulation. It needs periods of quiet and calm. Introduce a quiet hour into the family routine, a time when all electronic devices are turned off and everyone engages in calm activities: drawing, sculpting, reading. Even 15 minutes of such a break allows the nervous system to recover. In an era of digital abundance, we have almost forgotten the value of live communication. A glance into the eyes, a touch, vocal intonations, all this carries information unavailable in any messenger. Research shows that children who regularly communicate with their parents face-to-face are 30% less prone to depression and anxiety. Live conversation stimulates the production of oxytocin, the hormone of trust and attachment, which is not released when exchanging messages online. Create technology-free spaces in your home. The kitchen can become such an island where the most important conversations happen while preparing dinner. Teenagers are especially open during joint activities. When attention is focused on a task rather than on each other, it's easier to talk about difficult things. Plan family activities without gadgets. Board games develop not only strategic thinking but also emotional intelligence. The ability to read nonverbal cues, to anticipate others' reactions. Reading aloud together, even with teenagers, creates a special atmosphere of trust and shared experiences. When going into nature, declare a digital detox. The first few hours might be uncomfortable. The brain is accustomed to constant stimulation. But gradually, a special state of presence emerges, where all senses are heightened and a deep connection with those around you arises. Teach children the art of deep listening, without interrupting, without formulating an answer in their head while the other person is speaking. Practice the talking stick technique. Only the person holding a symbolic object can speak. This teaches patience and attentiveness to the words of others. Create rituals that strengthen family bonds. Saturday breakfasts, Sunday walks, evening tea parties. It is in these recurring, predictable moments of closeness that a basic sense of security is formed, which then helps the child cope with the stress of the digital world. In a world where fakes and manipulations have become part of the information landscape, critical thinking transforms into an essential survival skill. It's not just the ability to doubt, but a whole set of tools for information analysis. Our children daily encounter hundreds of information messages, but their brains are not yet ready to automatically separate truth from fiction. Start with the basic question: who benefits? Even a 7-year-old child can understand that content creators pursue certain goals. Discuss advertising with children, the most obvious form of informational influence. Why is this blogger praising the new toy so much? Maybe they were paid for it. Such conversations lay the foundation for healthy skepticism. For elementary school children, the detective agency game works well. Ask your child to find 3 pieces of evidence that confirm or refute a statement from the internet. For example, do cats really always land on their feet? Finding the answer turns into an exciting investigation with source verification. For teenagers, suggest the 5 questions to a news story technique. Who is the author of the information? What evidence is provided? Are there other points of view? Is the information current? What emotions does it evoke? The last question is especially important. Emotionally charged messages are often used for manipulation, disabling critical thinking. Create a family habit of fact-checking. When a child shares interesting information from the web, instead of a skeptical, "Where did you read that?" ask with curiosity. Let's check together how accurate this is. This approach doesn't devalue the child's discovery, but instills a culture of fact-checking. Teach children to recognize informational noise, content created solely to attract attention without real value. Explain the principle of social media algorithms, which show what evokes strong emotions, not what is true or useful. For teenagers, this becomes a revelation that changes their attitude towards their news feed. In a world of constant notifications and endless digital stimuli, nature and creativity become not just a pleasant addition, but vitally necessary sources of restoration. When a child leaves home and finds themselves among trees, a real neurobiological miracle occurs. After just 20 minutes in a park, levels of the stress hormone cortisol decrease by 30%, and the activity of the parasympathetic nervous system, responsible for relaxation, increases. The Japanese call this Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing, the practice of mindful presence in a natural environment. For children of the digital generation, such baths are especially valuable. They restore the ability to concentrate, which is depleted by constant fragmented stimulation. Studies show that after an hour of play in a natural environment, children demonstrate a 20% improvement in attention scores. Incorporate regular green hours into your family schedule. Time spent in nature without gadgets. This could be a morning walk before school, a weekend in the park, or even simply watching clouds while lying on the grass. For urban children, create a green corner at home with plants, natural materials, and an aquarium. Daily contact with living creatures that require care teaches responsibility and develops empathy, which often atrophies in the virtual world. Creativity is another powerful tool for restoring mental balance. When a child draws, sculpts, or builds, they enter a special state of flow. Complete immersion in the process where external stimuli cease to exist. This is a natural meditative state that modern children rarely experience due to fragmented attention. Create a creative station at home, a place where simple materials for self-expression are always available. Paper, paints, clay, construction sets. It is important that these activities are free from evaluation and expectations of results. The value lies in the process itself, not in creating a masterpiece. For teenagers, creativity can take the form of music, photography, video creation. It is important to support these hobbies as a healthy alternative to passive content consumption. The future is already here. Technologies once dreamed of by science fiction writers have become a reality of our daily lives. And the main challenge for parents today is to raise a generation that will not just survive, but thrive in this new world. Digital resilience is not a temporary strategy, but a fundamental set of skills necessary for every child of the 21st century. All the techniques and practices we have discussed, from mindful breathing to an information diet, are bricks in building your child's inner core. But the most important element of this foundation is the development of the ability for self-regulation. Children who can recognize their emotional states and adjust them are 80% more successful in coping with the challenges of the digital environment. The key skill of the future is flexible attention, the ability to deeply immerse oneself in a task when necessary, and to consciously switch between different types of activities. This skill is formed not through prohibitions, but through practice. Regular periods of concentration, interspersed with full rest. Parents often ask, how do I prepare my child for technologies that haven't been invented yet? The answer is simple: by raising them not as a consumer, but as a creator of the digital world. Encourage not passive viewing, but the creation of their own content, programming, digital creativity. This forms an active stance towards technologies. Most importantly, your personal example. Children do not listen to our admonitions, they observe our actions. If you yourself cannot put down your phone at dinner, no rules will convince your child of the value of live communication. Be the change you want to see in your children.